Hello and welcome to Moses Hobby World, where I talk about board games, painting miniatures, and all sorts of other cool stuff related to board gaming. Today I want to talk about the new Nova Aetas Renaissance Kickstarter, which is right now on the Kickstarter. You can pledge for it. It asks for $110,000 and it's currently on $650,000. I believe it will reach around $1 million. Has a lot of backers, and it's based on an older version of the game called Nova Aetas Dark Renaissance, whatever, which I played quite a lot. I finished the game twice with my kids. Had quite a lot of fun, and I wanted to share my knowledge about the original game and how I think that the new game will play out, according what they learned from the previous game, what they needed to change, what I think they changed well, and what I think they still had to work on. But the game itself is, well, let's go into it and let's talk about what the original game had. The original game had exactly what you saw in the new one. You had 3D train, you had tiles, and you had this clock that control activations, and you had a storybook and a rule book and character sheets with all sorts of stats information and a lot of miniatures. The dice in the game system basically is based around D6s and D8s. When you upgrade your characters to the next level, you get to roll D8s, but at the beginning you roll D6s. The game is based, the basic system based on successes. You have to hit a model, you roll like 3 or 4 dice, and you have to, each 5 plus is a hit. Okay, that's pretty much it. If you played most of the Games Workshop games, miniature games, whatever, you know the system, nothing new here. You have in the original game a lot of content. The game came to me in 2 waves. The first wave was just the base box and what's called the Vesuvius Forge, which is the Kickstarter exclusive expansion. And the second wave came with all the extra stuff. You can see here the Pigman and the Cersei and Katarina Sforza and the Manticore and stuff. And I played the game once in the first time it arrived to me, only the base game, and the second time I played it with all the Kickstarter cool new expansions. And the first time I played it, it was pretty much, I had to work really hard to make it playable. Okay, let's put it that way, because the game developers are from Italy, and it's pretty evident that English is not their first language. Okay, neither is mine. Okay, but when I read through the rulebook, when I read through the cards, when I tried to figure out how the game works, it required such an immense effort just to understand what the equipment cards were, with what equipment I start the game with. What happens when I level up? Do I get the new equipment that is marked for my level up character, or do I have to buy it? And etc. And all sorts of stuff and misprints in the cards and misprints in the game and some scenarios that are unresolvable. And they quickly put out an errata, but you know how it is, because when you publish a game in Kickstarter and you put it out and then you have to basically errata everything, it's not good. Okay, it's not show a lot of professionalism, and it's understandable because this was their first foray into this into board gaming creation. Okay, so when you look at the game in this way, the first time I played it, it was very hard, but I managed. Okay, I made probably some rule mistakes. I didn't play it as it was intended, but I managed to finish the game. And the second wave arrived. It arrived with everything the first wave had with text again. Okay, they redid the rule book, they redid the storybook, they redid all the cards in the game. everything was remade because, as I said, it was a very, very bad translation and mechanical explanations. Everything was very, very badly handled, and then they fixed everything. And even in the second time they did it, they had a lot of mistakes, but it was much better. Now you could actually read the rulebook and understand how the game played. How the game is, okay, how interesting it is. It's very interesting. The system that allows you to move your token on a clock to see how many action points, how many things you can make, and when your next activation will arrive is very nice. The clock is basically a rondel. Okay, it's nothing fancy. In that regard, it's a simple rondel that also helps to track when the game will end. Okay, because when you start the game at 8 a.m. and if you are not finished the game by 12 a.m., you lost. Okay, this is one of the lose conditions. It's a very, very comfortable way to track opponents and the characters and their interaction between each other, and I liked it a lot. The story, let's talk about the mechanics for a second. The mechanics are very simple. Every ability you have cost action points. This is basically the currency in the game. You don't have any money, you don't have anything like thing you have to spend to take actions except for time, which is a very nice concept because time is measured on the large clock, and the stronger effect you want to have from an ability or a spell, the more time it will take you to do that, and then basically you will act later in the turn. You start the game with 4 basic characters. You have the apprentice, the squire, the some sort of a cleric, and a thief. And when you level up at the end of some of the missions, you gain an experience, and then you can the game will tell you take a common ability, take a uncommon ability, take a rare ability, and then you can choose an ability from the about 9 abilities that each character have. And after you have 3 abilities, your character has advanced 3 times. The next time you advance, you are basically choosing a branch. You're going to, if you were a mage, you can go to be a elemental mage or a chronomancer, and then you get a loadout of equipment that you can use from now on. And from then on, when you level up, you choose an ability from that branch, and the combos were amazing. Okay, you could do amazing things with the stuff. The Chrono Mage can turn back time, you can slow bullets, you can do all sorts of cool things. The Thief could vanish. The Valkyrie, which is one of the expansion characters, could jump into the air and come back at her beginning of her next turn from the skies, skewering someone with a spear. It was cool. Okay, the game gave you a tactical feeling on the board, and the enemies were challenging, at least, and the game was fun. The story itself was, I don't know how to say it, but it was horrible. Okay, the story itself was horrible. I mean, even in Gloomhaven scope, it's not really a story. I don't understand how they built the story the way they did, because in one scene you are in a city and you are saving someone, and in the next scene you are in a forest running away from something that tries to get something from you, and in the next scene you are in an abandoned manor and you're playing chess. The game suddenly goes into, gives you this rules to play basically chess with dice, and your team splits into 2 halves, and each half is the king and queen of that side, and when you kill the king of the other side, that side win, and then you go into some sort of an end game. How everything works together is a puzzle to me, and I don't know what their intentions were exactly, or how the story went, but it was unplayable. The story, you didn't play this for the story, okay? It didn't make sense at all. And this was my thought. These were my thoughts on the original game. The original game also came with several expansions, except besides Vestivius Forge, which is the Kickstarter exclusive expansion, okay, which included some really large miniatures and some really cool stuff. They had also Pets expansion and a lot of Prey expansions. And now Prey is a very interesting concept in the game. Basically, when you go to the village, you can go to the inn, and then they tell you that there is some sort of a monster or a trio of wolves that roams the countryside, and you have to go and deal with them. And you can go and fight them. The game, when you're fighting a hunt monster, is completely different because they don't have an AI card that tells how they play and what they do. They have a deck, like Kingdom Death Monster, and every time that their turn shows up on the clock, you draw the top card and you do what it says to you. It said target the furthest enemy, move there, do this, and every type of monster has its own AI deck and its own unique behavior, which is extremely cool. I like it a lot. And this is one of the game's more refreshing mechanics because it takes the dungeon crawler vibe that you get from normal games like Descent or Shadows of Brimstone or whatever, and then it throws in some sort of boss fights that you get in Kingdom Death Monster. You also have a very good crafting system, which basically based on the fact that when you draw loot from monsters, you draw reagents like sulfur and mandragora and stuff. And then when you want to manufacture an item, you have to make sure that you have the correct items in your inventory to make it. And then you have to pay the gold and you get the item. A very clean system, a very nice system because you are on the hunt for that mercury. Okay, you want that alchemist philosopher's stone. The problem is that you don't always get what you want, and then it's basically based on luck because if you didn't draw that fourth philosopher's stone, you had to make this magical wand, well, you're pretty much not going to have fun with that. But the plus side is you are getting a lot of equipment, a lot of reagents during the game, and so the chances for you to get what you need are pretty high. Each reagent can also be sold for its gold cost, which is another way to gain gold. With gold in this game, you're basically donate to the church and get blessings. You buy the equipment that you have to craft, and as far as I remember that, and you train when you want to train for a new ability, and you don't get it as part of a mission reward. You can buy the ability, okay, for gold. It's your choice. Not every place can sell you those abilities. You have to have a place with some sort of an artisan or some sort of a trainer to help you learn the skill. And you have also another expansion, the Under Siege expansion, which basically allows you to start from the branching of the character. So you start as an elemental mage and then you move on. The Kickstarter exclusive also included a third level of upgrades that you can have to your characters. For example, the elemental mage could become a necromancer and have a totally new set of abilities and items, which is extremely cool, and I don't understand why they didn't include it in the base game. But this is the game. That's pretty much it. The base game, I played it twice. I had a lot of fun. I think it's a good game. Although the work that was required for me to enjoy it was pretty high, but I used to it because to enjoy games like, for example, Kingdom Death Monster or Shadow of Brimstone requires of you a lot of time beforehand to prepare the game and make it playable intuitively. And this is what I have to say about the original game. Now, after the original game, a few minutes on Sin Tempora. Sin Tempora was the spiritual predecessor of Nova Aetas Renaissance, and it made a lot of things, in my opinion, worse. And those things were as following. First of all, the game itself, as you can see, is pretty much the same mechanically. You have this clock, you have characters, you have maps, tiles, everything. The problem in this game, there were three problems in this game. Okay, the first problem is the upgrading system of the characters. When you gain a new skill, you basically had to slot in some sort of a token inside your character skill, which is cool, but then you had to reference what the skill does every time on a separate piece of a reference sheet, and it was cumbersome and it didn't work well. They should have used cards like they use in Nova Aetas. It's much more easier to reference a card than look for that specific symbol in a specific sheet. Didn't make sense. It was very hard to play. Also, the other problem they had, in my opinion, the Nova Aetas, as you saw, used dice with numbers. That basically you looked for a target number, and in Sin Tempora you had dice with symbols. So when you shoot someone, you are rolling 4 or 5 dice, and you're looking for bullets. And when you are attacking him, then with melee, you're looking for fists. And to activate a special ability, you will look for arrows or blood signs or whatever. And the problem is that it was very hard to read the marks on the dice, and taking into account the fact that some enemies cancel certain dices outright, and you have all sorts of immunities with if you roll a bullet and an arrow and a die, the entire die goes away. And you had all sorts of abilities that were triggered from symbols, and you also had to look for them. All in all, the game became devolved into a look for this sign every time you roll the die, and you roll the die a lot in this game, and it quickly became tiresome and cumbersome, and I didn't like it at all. Okay, I much prefer the original Nova Aetas system. I have no problem with symbol-based tactical game on dice, as long as it is in addition to the numbers and not instead of them. For example, Midara does that really well. Okay, you have dices with the dice themselves become better and better as you level up your equipment, and you have symbols on the corners of the die, and the symbols are very simple. It's shields, books, and explosions. Explosions basically activate critical hits, books activate all sorts of magical abilities, and shields activate all sorts of physical abilities. And the game moves very smoothly with this system. This system, you can see here, is very, very hard to decipher once you start playing. And it's a very big problem that I encountered with the game. And the other problem, the final problem, is the way that you set up scenarios. Basically, when you set up a scenario, you draw a scenario card, and in this card you have, look if I can find it here. Okay, it's not like this, okay? In the card you have the general layout of the map. You have marks on the map that indicates what level of creatures is in this game, is in this area, and next to each tile you have a text that indicates how many random scenic elements are in this area. Now, when I say random scenic elements, the process is as follows. You go to the scenic elements deck, you shuffle it, you draw elements for each area, and then you have to search for those scenic elements, terrain elements, in the box, and then you have to place them anywhere you want. Basically, each scenic element has a card with instructions on how to deploy it, what it does, and how it interacts with the players. With action points or whatever. The problem is that there are so many scenic elements in the game that you are being drowned by looking at them and by setting them up and then remembering what they are doing and during the game. It was bonkers. And and let's say I could understand the system if you had like one type of bush, one type of tree, one type of building with different sizes and whatever, and you just play the game with, you knew that bushes do that, but this is not what this game does. You had bushes that explode, bushes that heal you, bushes that make you drowsy when you're around them, and there were the tokens themselves, the 3D elements, were very slightly altered between each type to make them apparently recognizable, but I could not recognize them from about 2 feet distance from the table, and I constantly had to look down and look what color they are, and I also colorblind and green reded, so this was a very tiresome concept. This is the first problem with setting this up. The second problem is the random enemies, which is a cool concept and idea, and I liked it a lot. But the way that they did it, you also shuffle the entire enemy deck. You start to draw cards from it, and each time you draw a card, you populate one of the areas on the map, one of the areas on the map, with that enemy, and it caused the map to be populated by like 7 different enemy types, which you had to reference every time you did an action, because some of them had reactions, some of them had things they did during your turn, and some of them worked with other types of enemies that you had around them. So all in all, the entire game setup was a slog, and the game itself, with all this information floating around on the table and on the cards, and looking into icons and then referencing them into a hero skill sheet, it was I don't want to talk about it. Okay, I played the game like 5 or 6 times, tried to make it work, tried to tweak the rules here and there, but eventually I gave up. And that's pretty much it from Sin Tempora. And I don't say it, I think that the game, it's not for me, because although I do enjoy complicated games and games that have a lot of richness in characters and enemies and stuff, this game took too many steps forward, and I did not enjoy the experience it gave me. Now for Nova Aetas Renaissance, the reason that you all came into this video. The game draws a lot of inspiration from its predecessors, Nova Aetas Renaissance and Sin Tempora. For example, the dice in this game are numbered dice, thank God, but they also have symbols which activate special abilities, thank God. Okay, now it's much more clearer what you can do and achieve with what you roll. The game itself looks amazing. The 3D terrain is an incredible improvement over the previous incarnation. The miniatures, of course, they were painted by Angel Giraldez. If you know him, he's an amazing painter. They hired him for this presentation, which is an incredible idea and very expensive one, I guess. They kept the basic game elements intact. The cards of the characters themselves, they look different. All the abilities here are marked with studs, and you have to reference them to a reference sheet like the Sin Tempora did, which is unfortunate, but I guess it saves them like 7 cards per character, so that's pretty much broke their bank. And you have amazing miniatures, as you can see. Those are renders, okay? Don't count on the game pieces themselves to look that good. Okay, some of those, I mean, look at this thin long sword. It will never render go well into PVC miniature. And a lot of stuff, a lot of things that you're getting in this Kickstarter. From miniature perspective, this is pretty much a safe bet. You're going to get your money's worth in miniatures. And this system here is, I think, the best improvement in the game. As I said, the original campaign was very uncampaigny. Okay, I don't know how to put it in more gentle words. The story was non-existent. Okay, you had no idea why you were doing what you were doing and how you get from here to there. This system is much more in the vein of storytelling, where you achieve part of the story and then you see what's next. Okay, in the same map, in the same area, in the same things you were doing. This looks much more interesting. I think that this is a huge step forward from Cine Tempora and Nova Aetas. And this basically, I think, what's make the second edition much better. Now, a few notes. I can see here all the cards in the game, and then I saw this. These are train cards, much like those from Cine Tempora, which makes me believe that they are going for the random scenery setting up element in here as well, which is for me a huge turnoff. Okay, I remember how hard it was for me to play Cine Tempora with those type cards, and I just don't want to be in this movie again. Also, they have the random enemies, but that is fine as long as I don't take it to the randomizing the entire scenario using those enemies. But then you can see the setup card here. This is the beginning, the starting card of every mission. You get to the tile and what scenery to place in it. The unrandomized scenery, and then you have those marked around it, and you have a scenery number, which is in one of the unboxing reviews. Basically, the setup here is exactly the same like Cine Tempora, okay, where you randomize everything from enemies to scenery, except besides the predetermined scenery. But there is another problem here, which is often overlooked, and this is that the game, when you reach the next point in the story, it tells you to add another tile into the table and set it up again. Now the problem is that when you have to add another tile to the game, and the tiles in this game are very big, okay, they're like, I don't know, 12 inches by 12 inches each. They're pretty big, okay. When you have to place another tile in the game, and you don't know the final table size that the entire map will take, and you have to go over this randomizing element of placing scenery and monsters all each new tile, it can be cumbersome. Okay, it can take you easily 5 to 10 minutes between every time you finish a card like this to set up the new area. I'm not kidding. Okay, just try to look for a specific bush in a pile filled with scenery, 3D scenery elements. Okay, it's pretty much, it will take you a few minutes at least to just to place the scenery and learn what it does, and then to place the enemies, and then to reconsider what you're going to do right now with all this new thing and where to place them. It can get really messy. And one of the problems with placing a new tile in the game is that you don't know how to set up your gaming space when you don't know how large it should be at the end. And then you are going to all sorts of funky places when you have a 3x3 grid, huge tile laid out in front of you, and you have no place to play. And this is also a major problem in the design of this game. At least give us the general layout, okay? So we know how to plan our playing space, where to place the character sheets, where to sit players, so everything can work eventually, and we don't have to go up and sit down every time to switch places and see how we can handle ourselves with this new area that we just placed down. And I think those two things, the randomized terrain and the is probably the reason that I won't back this. But then I saw that they had an upgrade pack, and I said, well, if it's priced reasonably, and I want to experience the new stories, then why not buy it and experience the story? And then I looked at this new upgrade kit, and it struck me that it only had 30 enemy cards, 30 draft cards, and 6 scenic elements cards. And then I looked through one of the updates, and they basically said that the upgrade kit is only to allow you to play the previous game Kickstarter items in the new Nova Aetas Renaissance version, which means that it's not actually an upgrade pack, it's a conversion kit. Okay, so when you are offering something that's called an upgrade pack and it's actually a conversion kit, this is really turning off, because what I wanted the upgrade pack to be is to have the new rulebook, to have the new story envelopes, to have the new storybook, to have the new characters with cards. Don't give me that fancy double-sided cardboard card, it's okay, but give me the characters, give me the stuff that I can play with. Give me a way to transform my previous game into the new edition, okay, so to speak. But what you did is to take the previous game, throw it away, and saying, well, if you want to play with the previous game's materials, some of them, not all of them, in the new game, you can buy this upgrade kit. But wait, what with the Vesavia's Forge expansion? What with the Undercity's expansion? What with the Pet expansion? What with all the cool stuff that you put in the first edition that now is unusable? Okay, this is a move that I cannot understand. I don't know if enough people will talk about it. It will get more traction, but the original Kickstarter had like very few backers, and I don't think that they had like 1,125 backers, and I don't think that for those kind of numbers they're going to produce a full blown conversion upgrade kit. So I guess we're stuck with this. So my final verdict, I won't back this game. Okay, it looks cool, it looks really nice, but buying this, in addition to what I already got from the first Kickstarter, making this game cost upward to 2,000 shekels, which is around $600 for a board game, which is basically just to play the second iteration of it, is quite a hefty expense. That said, if you're a new Nova Aetas Renaissance and you don't own the previous edition, I think this game is really fun. Okay, I think they learned a lot from the previous games. They improved it a lot. I have some caveats about the scenery system and the random spawning system and the scenario setting up system, but I don't know if they actually improved that or not. I know that in the Sina Tempora Kickstarter, after the first outcry that you had to place so many enemies on the board, different enemies on the board, they said that, oh no, we meant only that you draw one card from the, let's say, level 1 enemies, and then populate all the level 1 areas in the map with those enemies. I said, okay, that's nice to know. Why did you didn't put it down in the rulebook ahead of time? So they might do that in here too, so that's okay. But the game, it looks good. And I think that if you are interested in this type of game, which is a tactical, fantasy, historical slash magical game of dungeon crawler with a very